Control him. The management consultant hissed, aggressively smoothing her blazer after deliberately kicking an 8-year-old boy in the stomach. As the frail child, his body ravaged by terminal leukemia, collapsed to the first-class cabin floor, gasping for air, his mother threw herself over him with a shattered scream. While the cowardly flight crew rushed to offer the attacker water rather than aid the dying boy, the woman smugly returned to her laptop, confident her status made her untouchable. What she didn't know was that the child's father was the billionaire CEO of the very airline they were flying. In exactly 52 minutes, her freedom and the crew's careers would be completely dismantled by a father who owned the aircraft they were standing on. Tanya Thompson had not slept in 4 days, not a nap, not 20 minutes with her head against a wall, nothing. 4 days of watching monitors beep next to her son's hospital bed in Atlanta. 4 days of doctors walking in, looking at charts and walking out without saying anything hopeful. Her son Malik was 8 years old, late-stage leukemia, the kind that does not negotiate. She called her husband David on a Tuesday night. She did not bother with hello. There is a specialist in Seattle. He will see Malik, but we have to be there by Thursday. David was sitting in a boardroom full of international investors. He stood up, walked out without a word, and pressed the phone hard against his ear. Book the flight. I will meet you when you land. David, come with us. I cannot. This meeting the board will not let me. Your son is dying. The line went quiet. Tanya could hear him breathing. I know. Book the flight. I will be in Seattle before you get to the hospital. I swear. Tanya hung up and looked at Malik sleeping in the hospital bed. He was so thin. His arms looked like they belonged to a child half his age. The chemo had hollowed him out, took his hair, took the weight from his face, took everything except this stubborn little spark behind his eyes that refused to quit. She booked 2 first-class seats on Atlas National Flight 714, not for luxury because Malik needed room to lie flat. He needed space for his portable oxygen. He needed to not be crammed into a seat where every pocket of turbulence made him cry out. Wednesday morning, Tanya carried Malik through the jet bridge. He was too weak to walk the full distance. She had his blue blanket with the stars on it tucked under one arm and Malik tucked under the other. A flight attendant young woman named Jessica Reed offered to help. Tanya shook her head. I got him. Thank you. They settled into row 2, left side. Malik wanted the window. He always wanted the window. Even sick, even hurting, he loved watching clouds. Mom, are we going to fly above the rain? Way above it, baby. Is Daddy going to be there when we land? He promised. Malik nodded. That was enough for him. His father's promises were the one currency that had never lost value in his short life. He closed his eyes and fell asleep before the plane pushed back from the gate. Tanya leaned her head back. Every muscle in her body ached. She wanted to close her eyes, but she could not. She watched Malik's chest rise and fall. She counted his breaths. 12 per minute, shallow but steady, 3.5 hours. She told herself she just had to survive 3.5 hours. Lauren Whitmore did not walk onto that plane. She marched onto it. Phone against her ear, voice loud enough to carry 3 rows deep, barking at someone about a quarterly projection that was off by 2%. She did not greet the flight attendant, did not nod, did not look at a single person as she dropped into seat 2C across the aisle and snapped her seatbelt like it had personally offended her. She was 46, senior management consultant, $500 an hour for her opinion, and she made sure everyone within earshot understood that her time was worth more than theirs. She noticed Malik immediately, the oxygen tube, the blanket, the frail body curled into a ball. She noticed Tanya next to him. Her eyes moved from the boy to the mother and back again, and her mouth pressed into a tight line. She said nothing, but she shifted in her seat with a sharp, deliberate discomfort that was meant to be noticed. 40 minutes in, Malik woke up screaming inside his own body. The pain hit before his eyes opened deep in his abdomen, rolling relentless. He groaned, tried to swallow it, tried to be brave, but a small broken sound escaped his lips. Tanya was on him instantly. "Where does it hurt, baby? Show me." Malik pressed both hands against his stomach. "Same spot, Mom. It is the same spot." Tanya pulled his medication from her bag, measured the dose, held it to his lips. "Drink this slow." "That is it." He swallowed and winced. The medicine was bitter and it burned going down. He pulled the blanket tighter and whimpered again. Quiet. So quiet, but not quiet enough. Lauren turned her head. She stared at Malik for 3 full seconds. Then she hit the call button. Jessica appeared. "How can I help you, ma'am?" Lauren did not lower her voice. She did not try to be discreet. She wanted everyone around her to hear. "Is there somewhere else that child can be moved? I paid for first class. I did not pay for this." Jessica glanced at Malik, curled up, eyes shut, oxygen tube slightly crooked. She looked back at Lauren. "Ma'am, the cabin is fully booked. I am not able to move them." "Then do something about the noise." "Ma'am, the child is, I do not care what the child is. I care about what I paid for. Handle it." Jessica opened her mouth, closed it. She looked toward the galley where Mark Ellison, the lead flight attendant, was stacking cups. She wanted to say something. She wanted to tell this woman that the boy was clearly sick, that maybe some basic human decency was in order. But something stopped her. The fear of a complaint. The unspoken rule drilled into her during training. First class pays more. First class gets more. First class comes first. "I will see what I can do," Jessica said. She walked away. She did nothing. 20 minutes passed. Malik's pain got worse. This time, the wave hit him like a fist from the inside. His whole body seized. He cried out, not loud, but raw, the sound of a child who has been fighting too long and is running out of fight. Tanya wrapped her arms around him. "Breathe, baby. Breathe with Mama. In and out. That is it. You are doing so good. Mom, it hurts so bad. I know, baby, I know." Lauren slammed her laptop shut, threw her glasses on the tray, turned in her seat, and looked directly at Tanya. "Are you kidding me? You bring a child in this condition onto this plane, into this cabin, and you cannot keep him quiet. Some of us have actual work to do." Tanya felt every word land like a punch. She held Malik tighter and stared at this woman. "He has cancer. He is in pain. We are going to see a specialist." Lauren laughed. Not a real laugh. The kind that is designed to humiliate. Then he belongs in an ambulance, not up here making everyone else suffer. A man in row 3 shifted uncomfortably. A woman across the aisle looked at her hands. An older gentleman 2 rows back shook his head slowly. Nobody spoke. Nobody said a single word. Tanya turned away. She did not have the energy to fight this woman and hold her son together at the same time. She chose her son. 10 minutes of fragile quiet. Malik's breathing evened out. The pain eased just enough for his grip on Tanya's arm to loosen. He lay still, eyes half, up staring at nothing. Tanya stroked his forehead and whispered, "Almost there, baby." They were not almost there. They had nearly 2 hours left. But she said it because that is what mothers do when the truth is too heavy for a child to carry. Then Malik shifted. Just a small movement adjusting his body in the seat, and the pain came roaring back. It tore through his stomach and ripped a cry out of him that he could not hold back. Loud, raw, the sound of a body that is breaking. Lauren Whitmore stood up. No hesitation, no pause. She stood up from her seat, stepped into the aisle, and she kicked Malik Thompson directly in the stomach. Hard, deliberate, the sole of her shoe connecting with the midsection of a dying child. Malik folded. His eyes blew wide open. The air ripped out of his lungs in a gasp that did not sound human. His oxygen tube came loose. His blanket fell. His small hands grabbed at his stomach as his body crumpled sideways. Lauren leaned down into Tanya's face close enough for Tanya to feel her breath control him. 1 second of absolute silence. Then Tanya screamed, not anger, something deeper, the sound a mother makes when her child is hurt in front of her. And she could not stop it. She threw herself over Malik, pulling him into her chest. her hands running over his stomach, his ribs checking for damage, feeling for the worst, her mind racing through every nightmare possibility. The kick, the cancer, the weakened tissue. What if something ruptured? What if something tore? Help. Somebody help my son, please. Row 3 was on its feet. A man had his phone recording. A woman was slamming the call button. An elderly man across the aisle stood up and pointed straight at Lauren. What is wrong with you? What did you just do to that child? Lauren smoothed her blazer, sat back down, opened her laptop. She did not look at anyone. He should not be on this plane. Jessica came running from the galley. She saw Tanya on the floor cradling Malik, rocking him, tears running down her face. She saw passengers standing. She heard shouting, "What happened? She kicked my son. She kicked my baby." Jessica looked at Lauren. Lauren did not look up. Jessica froze, completely froze. She had been trained for drink orders and turbulence and drunks who would not sit down. She had not been trained for this. Mark Ellison stepped in behind her. He took one look at the scene and made a decision that would cost him everything. He walked to Lauren first. "Ma'am, I need you to remain calm. Can I get you anything?" "Some water?" Tanya heard it. She heard the lead flight attendant offer comfort to the woman who just kicked her dying son. Her voice came out like a blade. "Are you out of your mind? She assaulted my child. He has terminal cancer and you are offering her water." Mark raised both hands. "Ma'am, I understand you are upset." "Upset. My son cannot breathe. Divert this plane now. Ma'am, I need everyone to stay calm so we can do not tell me to stay calm. Get a doctor. Land this plane." Mark looked at Jessica. Jessica looked back at him. Neither moved. The seconds stretched out like they were made of concrete. A woman in row 4 pushed past both of them and dropped to her knees beside Tanya. She was in her 60s, gray hair, steady hands. "My name is Doris. I am a retired nurse. Let me look at him." Tanya loosened her grip just enough for Doris to examine Malik. Doris checked his pulse, listened to his breathing pressed gently on his abdomen. Malik whimpered and tried to curl away from her hands. Doris looked up at Mark Ellison. 40 years of trauma rooms and emergency wards stared out of her eyes. His abdomen is rigid. He needs medical attention now. Get this plane on the ground. Mark walked to the cockpit, knocked, spoke through the door. 2 minutes later, he came back with the answer Tanya already expected. "The captain says we are past the diversion point. We land in Seattle in approximately 90 minutes. Medical team will be at the gate. 90 minutes. Her son just got kicked in the stomach by a stranger. He has cancer eating him alive. His abdomen is rigid, and they want her to wait 90 minutes. Dora stayed on the floor beside them. She looked at Tanya and said quietly, "I am going to stay right here with you. I am not going anywhere." Tanya held Malik against her chest. His breathing was shallow. His body was shaking. She pressed her lips to the top of his head and closed her eyes. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. 2 rings. David. He knew before she finished saying his name. He knew what happened. A woman on the plane kicked Malik in the stomach hard. He is on the floor. Nobody will help us. They will not divert. David. I am so scared. Silence, but not empty silence. The silence of a man whose entire body has just gone still. Which flight? Atlas National 714. Is he conscious? Yes. He is in a lot of pain. A nurse passenger is helping. The crew is doing nothing. David. She kicked him because he was crying, because his pain was bothering her. Who a white woman across the aisle. She kicked our baby and told me to control him. David Thompson was standing in the parking garage of Meridian Holdings headquarters in Atlanta. His car keys were in his hand. His briefcase was at his feet. The world around him went very, very quiet. Listen to me. Stay with Malik. Do not leave him. Do not talk to that woman. Do not talk to the crew. I am handling this. David. What are you going to? Everything. He hung up. 4 phone calls, 6 minutes. First call. Chief of Security. Every piece of surveillance from Flight 714 gets preserved right now. Cabin cameras, cockpit audio gate recordings. If 1 second of footage disappears, I will personally end careers. You have 10 minutes. Second call. Head of Airline Operations, Flight 714, Atlanta to Seattle. Full medical team at the gate. Airport police at the gate. The entire flight crew stays on that aircraft after passengers deplane. Nobody leaves until I get there. Nobody. Third call. Personal attorney. A passenger physically assaulted my 8-year-old son on one of my planes. He has terminal leukemia. I want charges drafted before that aircraft touches the runway. Fourth call, board chairman Richard Caldwell. Richard, what I do in the next 2 hours is going to be on every news channel in the country. I am calling you as a courtesy. I am acting as a father. I will not apologize. Richard asked one question. What do you need from me, Trust? You have it. David called the charter service. I need a jet Seattle. Now, Mr. Thompson, the soonest availability right now. I do not care about the cost. Get me in the air in 30 minutes, or I will find someone who can. 28 minutes later, David Thompson was airborne heading west 500 miles per hour. He sat alone in that charter jet. No calls, no emails, no reports. He stared out the window at the clouds below him and thought about the day Malik was born 8 years ago. That tiny body fitting in his 2 hands, those eyes looking up at him for the first time. And the promise he made in that delivery room, not out loud, just inside his chest, where the things that matter most live. Nobody will ever hurt you while I am alive. He had kept that promise through the diagnosis, through the first round of chemo that nearly killed his son. Through the nights when Malik screamed and David sat on the cold floor beside his bed, holding his hand until sunrise. He had kept that promise for 8 years. Today it was broken by a stranger on his own airline, while his own employees watched and offered the attacker a glass of water. His phone buzzed. Head of security. Sir, we have the footage. All of it. Cabin camera is clear. The woman in 2C steps into the aisle and kicks the boy in the midsection. Crew response was delayed by over 90 seconds. Lead attendant approached the assailant before attending to the child. Captain denied diversion request. David's hand squeezed the phone until his knuckles turned gray. How long until 714 lands? 52 minutes. My ETA 14 minutes behind them. Car will be on the tarmac. Tell the team at the gate that woman does not leave. That crew does not leave. Nobody walks off that jet bridge until I am standing at the bottom of it. He put the phone down. 52 minutes. Somewhere ahead of him, his son was lying on the floor of a first-class cabin with his mother's arms around him, trembling, struggling to breathe, wondering where his father was. Malik's voice, small and broken, pressed against Tanya's chest. Is Daddy coming? Mom Tanya pulled him tighter. Her tears fell into his hair. Daddy is coming, baby. Daddy is coming. 52 minutes. That is what they told Tanya. 52 minutes until the plane landed. 52 minutes with her son curled against her chest on the floor of a first-class cabin, shaking, struggling to pull air through lungs that did not want to cooperate. Doris, the retired nurse, had not moved. She stayed right there on the floor beside them, one hand on the leak's wrist, counting his pulse every few minutes. Her face gave nothing away, but her eyes told Tanya everything. This was not good. This was not stable. This was a child whose body was already at war with itself, and someone had just opened a new front. His pulse is fast, Doris said quietly. Too fast for a boy his size. We need to keep him still. He is burning up, Tanya whispered. Feel his forehead. Doris pressed the back of her hand against Malik's skin. She closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, she looked at Tanya with the kind of honesty that only comes from decades of telling families things they do not want to hear. He has a fever. Could be stress response. Could be something else. Either way, he needs a hospital, not a plane. Tanya looked up toward the cockpit that sealed that wall between her son and the people who could bring this plane down faster. She wanted to scream. She wanted to bang on that door until her fists bled. but Malik was in her arms and she could not let go of him. She would never let go of him. 48 minutes, Doris said, checking her watch. We can do 48 minutes. Malik's fingers curled around a fistful of Tanya's shirt. His voice came out so thin it barely existed. Mom, that lady hurt me. Tanya bit down on the inside of her cheek so hard she tasted blood. I know, baby. She is never going to touch you again. Why did she do that? Tanya did not have an answer. She had 100 answers, and none of them were fit for an 8-year-old boy who still believed the world was mostly good. Some people are broken inside, Malik. It has nothing to do with you. Am I broken too? No, baby. You are the strongest person on this plane. 12 rows back, a man named Gerald Carter sat with his phone in his hand and his conscience on fire. Gerald was 58, a retired police officer from Memphis, and he had watched the entire thing happen. He had seen Lauren stand up. He had seen the kick. He had seen the crew do nothing. And he had sat there frozen just like everyone else. He was not frozen anymore. Gerald unbuckled his seatbelt and walked up the aisle toward first class. Mark Ellison stepped in front of him before he reached row 2. Sir, I need you to return to your seat. I need you to move. Sir, I am a retired law enforcement officer. That woman committed assault on a minor. You are required by federal aviation law to restrain her or have the captain authorize restraint. You have done neither. Now move. Mark's face went pale. He did not move, but he did not speak either. Gerald looked past him at Lauren, who was sitting in her seat with her laptop open, like the world owed her an apology for being inconvenienced. Ma'am, I witnessed what you did. When this plane lands, you are going to be arrested. I want you to understand that. Lauren did not look up. I want you to understand that you are disturbing me. Gerald stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned to Mark. I want your name, and I want the names of every crew member on this flight. I am filing a federal complaint the moment we are on the ground. Mark swallowed hard. Sir, we are handling the situation. You are not handling anything. You offered that woman water after she kicked a dying child. That is not handling. That is complicity. Gerald turned and walked back to his seat, but he did not sit down quietly. He leaned over to the couple next to him and said loud enough for the rows around him to hear, If anyone recorded what happened up there, do not delete it. You are going to need it. 4 passengers immediately checked their phones. 3 of them had video. At 37,000 feet, the cabin of Atlas National Flight 714 had split into 2 worlds. The front, where Lauren Whitmore sat, untouched and unchallenged in her first-class seat, and the floor where a mother held her dying son and a retired nurse counted the minutes. Jessica Reed stood in the galley with her back against the beverage cart. Her hands were shaking. She had not stopped shaking since it happened. She kept replaying it in her mind. The sound of the kick, the way the boy's body folded the scream from his mother, and her own feet rooted to the floor doing absolutely nothing. Mark walked in. He looked at her. We filed the report after landing. Standard procedure. Jessica shook her head. Standard procedure. Mark, a passenger assaulted a child, and we will document it. We should have done more. You should have done more. You went to her first. You offered her water. Mark's jaw tightened. I was de-escalating. You were protecting her. I was doing my job. Your job is to protect passengers, all of them, including the 8-year-old on the floor right now. Mark turned away from her. Drop it, Jessica. We follow protocol. We file after landing. That is it. Jessica stared at his back. She felt something shift inside her. Not anger, exactly. Something closer to clarity. The kind of clarity that comes when you realize the system you trusted does not work the way you thought it did. She walked out of the galley past Mark and knelt beside Tanya. Ma'am, I am sorry. I should have done more. I should have stopped her. Tanya looked up. Her eyes were red and swollen. Why did you not? Jessica's voice cracked. I do not have a good answer for that. No, you do not. Jessica stayed there for a moment. Then she reached into her apron and pulled out a small bottle of water. She opened it and held it toward Malik. Would he like some water? It is cold. Tanya hesitated. Then she took it. She held it to Malik's lips. He took a tiny sip. Thank you, Tanya said. Not warmly, not with forgiveness, but with the bare minimum of acknowledgement that at least one member of this crew had finally done something. Jessica stood up and walked back to the galley. She pulled out her personal phone. She opened her notes app and she started writing down everything. Times, words, actions, names, every detail she could remember. She did not know what she was going to do with it yet, but she knew she was not going to let this disappear into a filing cabinet. 41 minutes to landing. In the charter jet behind them, David Thompson had not moved from his seat. His phone sat face down on the table in front of him. He had made all the calls, set every piece in motion. There was nothing left to do but wait, and waiting was destroying him. He picked up the phone and called Tanya again. How is he? His fever is climbing. The nurse says his pulse is too fast. David, I can see his veins through his skin. He looks like glass. How far out are you? 39 minutes. They said 39 minutes. I will be on the ground 14 minutes after you. Do not let them take him anywhere without you. Stay with him. I am not leaving him. And the woman. Tanya's voice dropped to a whisper, the kind of whisper that carries more rage than any shout. She is sitting 5 feet away from us, typing on her laptop like nothing happened. David said nothing for 3 seconds. When he spoke, his voice was calm, dangerously calm. The kind of calm that men like David only reach when they have moved past anger into something colder and more deliberate. She will not be typing much longer. He hung up. David reached into his briefcase and pulled out a leather folder. Inside was the organizational chart for Atlas National Airlines. Every name, every position, every chain of command. He ran his finger down the page until he found the crew assignments for Flight 714. Captain Raymond Torres, 22 years with the airline. Lead flight attendant Mark Ellison, 11 years. Flight attendant Jessica Reed, 2 years. Flight attendant Brenda Okafor, 7 years. David read each name twice. He memorized them, not out of habit, out of purpose. Then he opened his phone and called his head of HR. I need the complete employment files for the crew of Flight 714 pulled and on my desk by the time I land in Seattle. Every performance review, every complaint, every commendation, everything. Sir, pulling files that quickly requires, I do not care what it requires. I care about what I just told you to do. 1 hour. He hung up, picked up the phone again, called his VP of Communications. I need you to prepare a statement. Do not release it yet. Wait for my signal. The statement should say that an incident occurred on Flight 714 involving the physical assault of a minor passenger by another passenger. It should say that the airline is cooperating fully with law enforcement, and it should say that the crew's response is under investigation. David, are you sure you want to go public with, I did not ask for your opinion. I asked for a statement. Write it. 34 minutes to landing. Lauren Whitmore closed her laptop. She had stopped working 10 minutes ago, but kept the screen open as a shield. Now she closed it and slid it into her bag. She adjusted her hair, checked her phone, sent a text to someone, put the phone back down. She glanced down at Tanya and Malik on the floor. Malik had his eyes closed. Tanya was rocking him gently. Doris was still beside them, checking his pulse. Lauren looked away, not with guilt, with irritation. Like the sight of a mother holding her injured child was somehow still an inconvenience. A woman in row 1, someone who had been silent this entire time, turned around and looked at Lauren. Her name was Patricia Yu. She was 62 years old, a grandmother of 4. I hope you know what is waiting for you on the ground. Lauren raised an eyebrow. Excuse me. You kicked a child. A sick child. Do you understand what that means? I understand that I corrected a situation the crew was too incompetent to handle. Patricia stared at her. Corrected. You think kicking a boy with cancer is a correction? I think certain people need to understand that their problems are not everyone else's burden. Patricia's hands trembled not from fear, from the effort of keeping herself in her seat. You are a monster. Lauren turned away. And you are dramatic. Patricia looked over at Tanya. Their eyes met. Patricia mouthed 2 words. I saw. Tanya nodded. She did not have the strength for anything more, but she held that look in her chest, like a small flame. Someone saw, someone cared, someone was going to remember. 26 minutes to landing, Malik opened his eyes. He looked up at his mother. Something had changed in his face. The pain was still there, written into every line of his small features. But there was something else now. Fear. Mom, am I going to die on this plane? The question hit Tanya like a car. She stopped breathing, stopped rocking, stopped everything for one terrible second. No, baby, you are not going to die. Not here. Not today. Daddy is coming. The doctors are going to be there when we land. You are going to be okay. But what if I am not Malik David Thompson? You listen to me. You have fought every single day for 2 years. You have beaten every number they gave us. You are the toughest person I have ever known, and you are not done fighting. Do you hear me? He nodded weakly. A tear rolled down the side of his face and disappeared into the collar of his hoodie. Doris leaned in close to Tanya's ear, his pulses climbing. 140. We need to keep him calm and still. Talk to him. Keep his mind somewhere else. Tanya wiped her own tears with the back of her hand. She pulled the star blanket over Malik's legs and started doing what she had done 1,000 times in hospital rooms. She started telling him a story. You remember the time Daddy took you fishing? You were 5. You caught that little sunfish and you screamed so loud Daddy almost fell out of the boat. A ghost of a smile crossed Malik's face. He did fall. He got his shoes wet. He did. And then you made him take a picture with the fish, even though it was the size of his thumb. It was bigger than his thumb, Mom. Okay, it was bigger than his thumb. And what did you name that fish? Captain Bubbles. Captain Bubbles. And you cried when we had to throw him back. I did not cry. You cried, baby. Maybe a little. Tanya laughed. It came out wet and broken, but it was a laugh. Doris smiled beside them. For 30 seconds on the floor of a first-class cabin that had failed them in every way, they found something small and warm to hold on to. Then the seatbelt sign came on. Ladies and gentlemen, we are beginning our descent into Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts. Doris helped Tanya lift Malik back into his seat. He winced with every movement. Tanya buckled him in as gently as she could, tucking the blanket around him, adjusting the oxygen tube that Jessica had helped reconnect 20 minutes earlier. Doris squeezed Tanya's hand. You did good, Mama. He is going to make it. Tanya squeezed back. Thank you for everything. Doris returned to her seat in row 4. She buckled in and stared straight ahead, but her hands were clasped tight in her lap, and her lips were moving in a silent prayer. 15 minutes to landing, the plane dropped through the clouds. Malik looked out the window. He could see the gray-green outline of the Pacific Northwest below the sprawl of the city, the tiny cars on the highways. Mom, I can see Seattle. Almost there, baby. Is Daddy already there? Tanya checked her phone. David had sent one text, 3 words. 14 minutes behind you. She looked at Malik. He is almost there, too. Lauren Whitmore was applying lipstick. She pulled a compact mirror from her purse, checked her reflection, and pressed her lips together. She dropped the mirror back into her bag and straightened her blazer for what must have been the 10th time. She looked composed, polished, ready for whatever meeting or dinner or engagement was waiting for her on the ground. She had no idea what was actually waiting for her. Gerald Carter, the retired officer in row 14, was on his phone texting his former partner at the Memphis Police Department. I need you to look something up for me. Federal statute on assault aboard an aircraft. 18 U.S.C. Section 113. I am going to need the exact language when I make my statement. His former partner texted back within a minute. Assault on an aircraft federal offense, up to 20 years if the victim is under 12. Gerald, what happened? Gerald typed back. You will see it on the news tonight. 10 minutes to landing. The plane shuddered through a patch of rough air. Malik grabbed Tanya's arm. She held him steady. Just bumps, baby. Just bumps. The descent continued. The wheels locked into position with a mechanical thud that vibrated through the cabin. Passengers shifted in their seats. Bags were checked. Phones were turned on. Mark Ellison walked through the cabin doing a final check. When he passed row 2, he did not look at Tanya. He did not look at Malik. He looked at the overhead bin and kept walking. Tanya watched him pass and felt a cold certainty settle into her chest. That man knew what he had done, and that man knew it was not enough. 5 minutes. The runway appeared below them. The city tilted. The engine noise changed from a roar to a high whine as the pilots pulled the throttle back. Tanya leaned close to Malik. When we land, there are going to be a lot of people, doctors, maybe police. Do not be scared. They are all there to help you. Malik looked at her. And Daddy will be right behind us. 3 minutes, too. The wheels hit the runway with a jolt that sent pain through Malik's body. He cried out and Tanya covered his mouth gently with her hand, not to silence him, but to press her palm against his lips so he could feel her there, so he could feel that he was not alone. The plane taxied toward the gate. Passengers began unbuckling before the seatbelt sign went off. Lauren stood up and reached for the overhead bin, but something was different about this arrival. Through the windows on the left side of the aircraft, passengers could see the gate, and at the gate there were people, not the usual ground crew, not the standard pair of gate agents. There were 6 airport police officers in full uniform. There were 4 people in dark suits carrying identification badges. There were 2 paramedics standing beside a stretcher, and behind all of them, a cluster of people in Atlas National Airlines corporate uniforms with expressions that said something very serious was about to happen. A passenger in row 5 pressed his face against the window. What the hell is going on out there? Lauren looked out her own window. For the first time since she had kicked Malik Thompson, something shifted in her expression. Not guilt, not remorse, but a flicker of something she had not felt in a long time. Uncertainty. The jet bridge connected. The cabin door opened. Mark Ellison stepped forward to begin the deplaning process. A man in a suit appeared in the doorway before Mark could say a word. Atlas National Flight 714. Yes, sir. The man held up a badge. Corporate Security Meridian Holdings. Nobody deplanes until I say so. Crew remains on board. All of you. Mark blinked. Sir, that is not standard. I am not asking. I am telling you, sit down. Mark sat down. The security officer stepped into the cabin and walked directly to row 2. He looked at Tanya. He looked at Malik. Mrs. Thompson. Tanya nodded. Ma'am, we have a medical team at the gate. We are going to get your son off this plane first. Can he be moved? Carefully. Please be careful with him. 2 paramedics entered the cabin with a small stretcher. Gently, so gently, they lifted Malik from his seat. He looked up at the paramedic above him. Are you going to help me? We are going to take very good care of you, buddy. They carried him down the aisle. Every single passenger watched. Some had tears on their faces. Some had their hands over their mouths. Lauren Whitmore watched from her seat. She did not move. She did not speak, but her fingers gripped the armrest and her knuckles were white. Tanya followed the stretcher down the aisle. When she passed Lauren's seat, she stopped just for a second. She looked at Lauren. Lauren looked back. Tanya did not say a word. She did not need to. Everything was in her eyes. Then she turned and followed her son off the plane. The security officer watched them go. Then he turned to the cabin and spoke in a voice that left no room for negotiation. All crew members remain seated. All passengers remain seated. This aircraft is being held for an active investigation. Airport police will begin processing shortly. He looked at Lauren. "Ma'am, you are going to want to stay in your seat." Lauren opened her mouth. "I have a meeting. I need to, ma'am, stay in your seat." Outside on the tarmac below, a charter jet was making its final approach 14 minutes behind schedule, right on time. David Thompson was here. The charter jet had not fully stopped when David Thompson unbuckled his seatbelt. The wheels were still rolling, the engine still winding down, and he was already standing, already moving toward the door. A member of the charter crew stepped forward. "Sir, we need to wait until open the door." The man looked at David's face and did not ask again. He opened the door. A black SUV was waiting on the tarmac engine, running exactly where his security chief had promised it would be. David climbed in. The driver did not need instructions. He already knew. Gate B7. "Sir, the medical team has the boy. Your wife is with him." "How long?" 3 minutes. David stared through the windshield as the SUV cut across the tarmac. His hands were flat on his knees, perfectly still. But inside his chest, something was moving that he had not felt since the day the doctors told him his son had cancer. It was not rage. Rage burns hot and burns out. This was colder. This was the kind of thing that builds foundations and tears them down. This was a father who had reached the end of every compromise he was willing to make with the world. The SUV pulled up to the service entrance near Gate B17. David was out before it stopped. He walked through the door past 2 airport security officers who recognized him and stepped aside without a word and into the gate area. He saw the stretcher first. Malik was lying on it, so small against the white sheet that he almost disappeared into it. His oxygen tube was back in place. His eyes were closed. One paramedic was checking his vitals while another adjusted an IV line they had started. Tanya was beside him, holding his hand, her face wrecked from hours of crying and fear and the kind of exhaustion that goes deeper than sleep can fix. She looked up and saw David. For 1 second, neither of them moved. Then Tanya's face crumbled, not into tears, past tears, into the raw, unguarded collapse of a woman who had been holding the entire world together with her bare hands and could finally let someone else carry the weight. David crossed the distance in 4 strides. "Daddy is right here. A lady kicked me, Dad." David closed his eyes, opened them. "I know nobody is ever going to hurt you again." "She was mean, Dad. She said I should not be on the plane. She was wrong. You belong everywhere, Malik. Everywhere." Malik squeezed his father's hand. It was a weak squeeze, the kind that would not register on a machine, but David felt it all the way through his body. He leaned down and pressed his forehead against his son's forehead. He stayed there for 5 seconds, 10. He let the world wait. He let everything wait. This moment was not for the CEO of Meridian Holdings. This moment was for a father and his boy. Then he stood up. He turned to the lead paramedic. "Where are you taking him, Seattle Children's? Dr. Keating has been notified. He is assembling his team. I want the best room available. Private 24-hour monitoring. Whatever he needs. Already arranged, sir." David looked at Tanya. He reached out and touched her face. Gentle, like she might break. "Go with him. Stay with him. I will be there as soon as I can." Tanya grabbed his wrist. "David, what are you going to do?" "What I should have been there to do 3 hours ago." "David, please do not let anger. This is not anger, Tanya. This is accountability." She held his wrist for another moment. Then she let go. She climbed into the ambulance beside Malik's stretcher. The doors closed. David watched until the ambulance pulled away and disappeared around the corner of the terminal. Then the father stepped back, and something else stepped forward. He turned to his chief of security, a man named Victor Hale, who had been with Meridian Holdings for 9 years and had never seen David Thompson look like this. "Where is the crew?" "Still on the aircraft, all 4 of them as you instructed, and the woman still in her seat. Airport police are standing by, but they are waiting for your authorization to proceed. They have it. I want her detained for assault on a minor. Federal charge. I want it done before she makes a phone call." Victor nodded and spoke into his radio. Within seconds, 2 airport police officers were moving down the jet bridge. and the footage Victor handed David a tablet. All cabin surveillance. The incident begins at timestamp 11,432. I have also collected 4 passenger recordings from personal devices. They all show the same thing. David pressed play. He watched a woman stand up. He watched her step into the aisle. He watched her drive her foot into his son's stomach. He watched Malik's body fold. He watched the oxygen tube come loose. He watched Tanya scream. He watched the flight attendant freeze. He watched the lead attendant walk to the woman first. He watched him offer her water. David pressed pause. He stared at the frozen image for a long time. His thumb hovered over the screen, resting on the frame where Mark Ellison's hand was extended toward Lauren Whitmore with a cup of water, while his son lay on the floor, gasping for air 12 inches away. Victor. Sir, I am going on that plane now. Sir, legal advises that you let the process I heard legal. I am going on the plane. Victor did not argue. He had worked for David long enough to know the difference between a man asking for advice and a man who has already decided. David Thompson walked down the jet bridge. His footsteps echoed against the walls, steady measured each one, landing like a sentence being punctuated. He stepped onto the aircraft. The first thing he saw was Lauren Whitmore standing in the aisle with her bag on her shoulder, arguing with an airport police officer. This is ridiculous. I have done nothing wrong. That child was disrupting the entire cabin, and his mother was doing nothing about it. I want to speak to a manager. I want to speak to someone in charge. David stopped 3 feet away from her. You are speaking to someone in charge. Lauren turned. She looked at David. Tall, broad-shouldered black, wearing a suit that cost more than her monthly retainer. She did not recognize him. She saw what she wanted to see. Another inconvenience. And who exactly are you? My name is David Thompson. I am the CEO of Meridian Holdings. We are the parent company of Atlas National Airlines. Every plane in this fleet belongs to my corporation, including this one. Lauren blinked. For the first time, her composure cracked. Not much. A hairline fracture, but enough. I do not see what that has to do with the boy you kicked is my son. Silence. Total, absolute silence. Every crew member, every officer, every person still on that aircraft stopped breathing. Lauren's mouth opened, closed, opened again. I did not know. You did not know he was my son. That is what concerns you. Not that you kicked a child, not that he has cancer, not that he is 8 years old and weighs 53 pounds and cannot fight back. What concerns you is who his father is. I was provoked. The child was disruptive, and the child was in pain. He has late-stage leukemia. He has been in chemotherapy for 2 years. Every bone in his body hurts. Every organ in his body is under attack. And you kicked him in the stomach because his suffering inconvenienced you. Lauren took a step backward. I want my lawyer. You are going to need one. Officers proceed. The 2 airport police officers stepped forward. One of them took Lauren's bag from her shoulder. The other spoke clearly and without hesitation. Ma'am, you are being detained on suspicion of assault on a minor aboard a commercial aircraft. This is a federal offense under Title 18 of the United States Code. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you. Lauren's face changed. The confidence that had carried her through 3 hours of untouchable arrogance crumbled in real time. Her lower lip trembled. Her eyes darted from the officer to David and back. This is insane. I barely touched him. David did not raise his voice. He did not need to. We have it on camera. 4 angles. You stood up, stepped into the aisle, and kicked my son. Hard enough to shift his oxygen tube, hard enough to leave a mark on a child with cancer. Barely touched is not what the footage shows. Lauren opened her mouth to speak again. Nothing came out. The officers took her by each arm and walked her up the aisle, off the plane, and into the jet bridge. She did not look back. David watched her go. He felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not relief, not yet. There was more to do. He turned to face the crew. They were seated in the jump seats near the front galley. Mark Ellison, Jessica Reed, Brenda Okafor, who had been in the rear cabin during the incident and had not come forward at all. And behind the cockpit door, Captain Raymond Torres. David looked at each of them in turn. Mark stared at the floor. Jessica stared at David with eyes that were red from crying. Brenda looked like she wanted to disappear into the wall. The cockpit door remained shut. Captain Torres opened this door. 3 seconds passed. The lock clicked. The door swung open. Captain Raymond Torres stood in the doorway. 22 years of service gray at the temples, the kind of man who had probably never been questioned by anyone who outranked him on an aircraft. Mr. Thompson. I was not aware of the full extent of, were you informed that a passenger assaulted a minor on your aircraft? Torres hesitated. I was told there was a disturbance in the first-class cabin. A disturbance. A woman kicked a dying child and your crew described it to you as a disturbance. Mark indicated that the situation was being managed. David turned to Mark. Is that what you told him? That it was being managed? Mark's voice came out thin. I followed protocol. I attempted to de-escalate the situation, and you de-escalated the attacker. You walked to the woman who had just assaulted a child, and you offered her water. You did not check on the boy. You did not call for medical assistance. You did not request restraint of the passenger. You de-escalated the person who committed the crime and ignored the victim. Mark's mouth moved, but no sound came out. David continued, I have watched the footage, Mark. All of it. 93 seconds passed between the assault and the first time any crew member made physical contact with the injured child. 93 seconds. And that contact was not from you. It was from a retired nurse in row 4 who pushed past your colleague to help because none of you would. Mark looked like a man watching his career catch fire. David turned to Jessica. You were the first crew member the woman contacted when she complained about my son. Is that correct? Jessica nodded. She was shaking. She asked you to move a sick child. What did you do? I said I would see what I could do. And what did you do? Jessica's voice broke. Nothing. I did nothing. You walked away and left a woman who had already expressed hostility toward a sick child sitting 5 feet from him with no intervention and no monitoring. 20 minutes later, she kicked him. Jessica's tears spilled over. I know what I did. I should have. Yes, you should have. David turned to Brenda. Where were you during the incident? Brenda swallowed. The rear cabin. I did not hear. When did you learn what happened? Mark told me during descent. And what did you do? He told me it was handled. Did you check on the child's silence? Did you offer medical assistance silence? Did you file a report Mark said he would handle? That is not what I asked you. Did you personally do anything? No, sir. David nodded slowly. He turned back to Captain Torres. Captain, you were informed that a child had been assaulted on your aircraft. You were asked to divert. What was your response? I evaluated the diversion options and determined that continuing to Seattle was the most efficient. A child with terminal cancer was kicked in the stomach, and your medical assessment from the cabin was that continuing for 90 minutes was more efficient than landing at the nearest available airport. Sir, the nearest diversion airport was only 20 minutes closer than Seattle, and with the approach time, 20 minutes. You chose not to divert because you would have only saved 20 minutes for an 8-year-old child who was assaulted on your plane. Tice went quiet. David reached into his jacket and took out his phone. He dialed one number. Richard, it is David. I am on the aircraft. I am proceeding. He hung up. He looked at the 4 crew members. Effective immediately, all 4 of you are suspended from duty pending termination. Your badge access will be revoked within the hour. Your employment files have already been pulled. An internal investigation will be conducted over the next 72 hours, and based on the footage and witness accounts I have already reviewed, I do not anticipate any of you returning to this airline." Mark Ellison stood up. "Mr. Thompson, with all due respect, I have 11 years with this company. I followed the de-escalation protocol exactly as I was trained. I did what I was supposed to do." David looked at him with something that was not contempt. It was worse than contempt. It was disappointment from a man who had built this company on the belief that his people would do the right thing. You were trained wrong, and you should have known better anyway. De-escalation does not mean prioritizing the comfort of an attacker over the safety of a child. Protocol does not override basic human decency. 11 years with this company, and when a woman kicked a boy with cancer, your first instinct was to offer her a beverage. Mark sat back down. He did not speak again. Jessica raised her hand slightly like a student. "Mr. Thompson." David looked at her. "I wrote everything down after it happened. Time's words, everything. I know it does not change what I did, but I wanted someone to have the truth." David studied her for a long moment. "Give your notes to Victor Hale. He is the head of security standing at the end of the jet bridge. Your cooperation will be noted in the investigation, but it does not change the outcome." Jessica nodded. She wiped her face and stood up. She walked past David and off the plane without looking back. David looked at the remaining 3 crew members. "You will be escorted off this aircraft individually. You will surrender your badges and company identification. You will not speak to media. Your union representatives have been notified." Brenda stood up and walked off without a word. Torres followed, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed straight ahead. The walk of a man who had spent 22 years building a reputation that had just been disassembled in 7 minutes. Mark was last. He stood slowly. He paused in front of David. "If I had known he was your son." David cut him off. "That is exactly the problem, Mark. You should not have to know whose son he is to protect it." Mark walked off the plane. David stood alone in the empty first-class cabin. Row 2, left side Malik's seat. The blue blanket with the stars on it was still there, crumpled against the window. Tanya had forgotten it in the chaos. David picked it up. He held it in both hands and pressed it against his face. It smelled like his son, like hospital soap and children's shampoo, and something underneath all of that. Something warm and alive and fighting. His phone buzzed. "Tanya, they are running tests. His abdomen has severe bruising. They want to do an ultrasound to check for internal damage." David's hand tightened around the blanket. "I am on my way. 15 minutes. David, is it done?" The crew is suspended. The woman is in custody. The footage is secured. All of them. Even the young one. All of them. Tanya was quiet for a moment. She tried David at the end. The young one. She came to us. She apologized. She gave Malik water. "I know it will be noted, but she had the chance to stop this before it happened and she walked away. I know. I just wanted you to know. I know." Silence between them. The kind of silence that married people share when words cannot reach the place where the pain lives. "Come to the hospital, David. Malik is asking for you. I am coming right now." He hung up. He folded the star blanket carefully and tucked it under his arm. He walked up the aisle, off the plane, and through the jet bridge. Victor was waiting at the end. "Sir, the media has the story. 3 passenger videos are already online. News crews are at the terminal. David did not slow down. No statements. Not yet. Sir, the communications team is asking. Tell them to wait. I am going to the hospital to be with my son. Everything else happens after." Victor nodded. "Your car is at the east exit. No cameras there." David walked through the terminal. People moved around him without knowing who he was, without knowing that the man carrying a child's blanket through the airport had just fired an entire flight crew and put a woman in handcuffs. He got in the car. The driver pulled away from the curb. David looked down at the blanket in his lap. He ran his thumb across one of the small embroidered stars. Malik had picked this blanket himself 2 years ago from a hospital gift shop the day before his first chemotherapy session. He said the stars would protect him while he slept. David pressed the blanket against his chest and stared through the windshield at the road ahead. Somewhere in a hospital room across the city, his son was lying under bright lights while strangers searched his broken body for more damage. And the one thing David wanted more than anything in the world, the one thing all his money and power and corporate authority could not give him, was the ability to go back 3 hours and be on that plane, to be in that seat, to be between his son and the woman who kicked him, to be the wall that should have been there, the wall that the crew should have been, the wall that the world should have been. He could not go back, but he could go forward. And going forward meant that what happened on Flight 714 was not going to end with a suspension and an arrest. It was going to end with the entire country watching. David walked into Seattle Children's Hospital at 6:47 p.m. He still had the star blanket under his arm. He had not eaten since morning. He had not stopped moving since Tanya's phone call. His body was running on something deeper than adrenaline, something that fathers find in themselves when the world has failed their child and they are the only thing left standing between that child and the dark. The nurse at the front desk recognized his name before he finished saying it. "Mr. Thompson, your son is in room 412. Dr. Keating is with him now. Your wife asked me to send you up the moment you arrived." David did not wait for the elevator. He took the stairs 2 at a time, 4 flights, and came through the stairwell door breathing hard. He walked down the hallway until he found 412. The door was open. Tanya was sitting beside the bed. Malik was lying, flat eyes closed, an IV in his left arm, a monitor beeping beside him in a slow, steady rhythm. Dr. Keating, a man in his late 50s with gray hair and a calm face that had delivered thousands of hard truths, was standing at the foot of the bed, studying a tablet. David stepped in. Tanya looked up. She did not speak. She just reached out her hand. David took it and held it. Dr. Keating looked at David. "Mr. Thompson, I am going to be direct with you. Please." The ultrasound shows significant bruising to the abdominal wall. There is minor internal swelling around the lower intestine, but no perforation and no active bleeding. Given Malik's condition, his platelet count, his overall fragility, this could have been catastrophic. He was lucky. If the blow had been 2 and higher, we would be having a very different conversation. Tanya made a sound, not a word, just a sound. The sound of a mother hearing how close she came to losing everything. David's grip on her hand tightened. What does he need rest monitoring? We will keep him overnight, run blood work every 4 hours, watch for any signs of internal hemorrhage. If he stays stable through the night, we can proceed with the consultation for the experimental treatment tomorrow as planned. And if he does not stay stable, Dr. Keating looked at David steadily. Then we deal with that when it comes. But right now, he is stable. He is strong, Mr. Thompson. Stronger than his body suggests. David looked at Malik, that small face against the white pillow, those closed eyes hiding the stubbornness that had kept him alive for 2 years past every prediction. 53 pounds of fight. "Can I sit with him?" "Of course. He's been asking for you every 10 minutes. David pulled a chair beside the bed. He sat down and placed the star blanket over Malik's legs gently, like tucking in a prayer. Malik's eyes fluttered open. "Daddy, you brought my blanket. I found it on the plane. Thought you might need it." Malik's fingers found the edge of the blanket and curled around it. "The stars are still there. They are not going anywhere, buddy. Neither am I." Malik closed his eyes again. Within a minute, his breathing deepened. He was asleep. David sat beside him and watched his son's chest rise and fall, counting each breath the way Tanya had counted them on the plane. Tanya leaned close. What happened with the crew, suspended all 4 pending termination, and her in-custody federal assault charge? Tanya closed her eyes. Good. It is not enough. Tanya opened her eyes and looked at him. David, it is not enough, Tanya. 4 people lose their jobs. 1 woman gets arrested. And then what? It happens again on another flight to another child to another family that does not have a CEO father to call. This cannot just be about us. What are you thinking? David was quiet for a moment. He looked at Malik, then back at Tanya. I'm thinking about going public, not just a corporate statement, a press conference, full transparency, the footage, the crew response, everything. Tanya sat up straight. David Malik's face will be everywhere. Our family, our son's illness, everything we have kept private for 2 years. I know. He is 8 years old. He did not ask for this. He did not ask to be kicked either. That landed between them like a stone dropped into still water. Tanya looked at the floor. David reached over and took her hand again. I will not do it without you. If you say no, I will handle this quietly. Internal investigation, private settlement. It all goes away behind closed doors. And if I say yes, then the world sees what happened to our son, and the world has to decide what kind of place it wants to be. Tanya looked at Malik sleeping. She watched the monitor blink. She listened to the beep that meant her son's heart was still beating. If we do this, it has to be about more than Lauren Whitmore. It has to be about every child who has ever been treated like they do, not belong somewhere because they are sick, or because they are different, or because they are black. David nodded. That is exactly what it has to be about. Tanya wiped her eyes. Then do it. But David, you protect his dignity. You show what happened, but you protect our son. Promise me. I promise. David stepped into the hallway and called his VP of Communications. Release the statement and schedule a press conference for tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. at the Atlas National Corporate Office in Seattle. David, the legal team, is strongly advising against the legal team does not have a son in a hospital bed. 9 a.m. Make sure every major network is there. He hung up and made one more call. Victor Hale. Victor, the passenger videos that are online, how many views? As of 20 minutes ago, the highest one has crossed 4 million. The others are climbing. Every major news outlet has picked it up. CNN, MSNBC, Fox, ABC, all of them. Your name is trending nationally. What is the public reaction? Overwhelmingly supportive of your family, sir. The footage is clear. People can see exactly what happened. There are also significant calls for criminal prosecution of the woman and termination of the crew. And the woman's identity, Lauren Whitmore, the internet, found her within an hour. Her employer, Morrison Craft Consulting, has already issued a statement distancing themselves from her. Word is they are preparing to terminate her as well. David leaned against the hospital wall. Has she made a statement? Her lawyer released one 20 minutes ago. Says the incident was, quote, a reflexive response to an overwhelming situation, and that Ms. Whitmore deeply regrets any harm caused. Reflexive. She stood up, walked across the aisle, and kicked a child. There is nothing reflexive about that. No, sir. Tomorrow at the press conference, I want the footage ready to play unedited. I want the timeline of crew response displayed. I want it all visible. Understood. David hung up. He stood in that hospital hallway for a long moment, his back against the wall, his eyes closed. His phone buzzed again. He looked at it. A text from Richard Caldwell, the board chairman. Board is behind you. Unanimous. Do what you need to do. David put the phone in his pocket and walked back into the room. 9:17 p.m. Malik woke up crying, not from a nightmare, from pain. The bruising in his abdomen had deepened, and every movement sent shockwaves through his battered body. He clutched his stomach and called out for Tanya, who was right there already reaching for him. I am here, baby. I am right here. Show me where it hurts. Everywhere, Mom. It hurts everywhere. David had stood up and hit the call button. A nurse came in within 30 seconds. She checked the monitors, adjusted the IV, and administered a dose of pain medication that Dr. Keating had authorized. It will take a few minutes to kick in, sweetheart. Can you be brave for me for just a few more minutes? Malik nodded through tears. David held one hand. Tanya held the other. They formed a circle around their son and waited for the medicine to work. 5 minutes later, the pain receded. Malik's grip loosened. His eyes grew heavy. But before he fell back asleep, he looked at David. "Dad, is that lady in jail?" "She is being held by the police." "Yes." "Is she going to say sorry?" David paused. He wanted to lie. He wanted to tell his son that the world worked the way it should, that people who hurt other people always feel remorse, always make it right. But Malik had been through too much for fairy tales. "I don't know if she will say sorry, buddy. Some people don't know how. But what she did was wrong, and she's going to face the consequences. That is what matters." "Dad." "Yeah." I was not being loud on the plane. I tried to be quiet. The pain just came, and I could not stop it. David felt something crack open inside his chest that he was not sure could ever be closed again. "You did nothing wrong, Malik. Not one thing. The pain is not your fault. The cancer is not your fault. And what that woman did is not your fault. Do you understand me?" "Yes, sir." "Say it back to me. It is not my fault. That is right. Now go to sleep. I am not going anywhere." Malik closed his eyes. David did not let go of his hand. 11:41 p.m. David sat in the hospital hallway with his laptop open on his knees. Tanya was asleep in the chair beside Malik's bed, her head tilted to one side, her hand still resting on Malik's arm. She had not let go of him since they arrived. David was reading, not reports, not financials. He was reading the comments section under the viral videos. Thousands of them. Tens of thousands. That woman needs to be in prison for the rest of her life. Why did nobody on that plane do anything? If that was my child, I would have lost my mind. This is what happens when people see a black child and decide he does not belong. God bless that boy. God bless his family. And then cutting through the noise like a siren, one comment that stopped David cold. "I was on that flight row 7. I saw everything. I am ashamed to say I did not stand up. I should have. I will regret that for the rest of my life. To the Thompson family, I am sorry." David stared at those words. He read them 3 times. Then he closed the laptop and leaned his head back against the wall. This was the thing that people would debate on television tomorrow, not just what Lauren did, but what everyone else did not do. The passengers who watched the crew who failed the system that made it easier to look away than to step forward. David knew that firing the crew was the right call. He knew that pressing charges against Lauren was the right call. But he also knew that neither of those things touched the deeper problem. The problem was not one woman in first class. The problem was an entire cabin full of people who saw a child get kicked and waited for someone else to fix it. He opened his laptop again and started writing. Not a speech, not a corporate memo. He started writing what he wanted to say tomorrow at the press conference, not as a CEO, as a father. 6:12 a.m. David had not slept. He showered in the hospital bathroom, changed into a fresh suit that Victor had delivered from his Seattle apartment, and checked on Malik one more time. Malik was awake. Groggy, but awake. "You look fancy, Dad. I have to go talk to some people this morning about what happened on the plane." "Yes." Malik thought about that for a moment. "Are you going to be on TV? Probably. Can you tell them something for me?" David sat on the edge of the bed. "Anything. Tell them I was not trying to bother anybody. I just could not help it." David put his hand on Malik's head. He held it there and felt the warmth of his son's scalp, the absence of hair where thick curls used to be. The fragile skull underneath that held a mind far braver than most adults David had ever known. "I will tell them, buddy." Tanya walked David to the hospital entrance. She straightened his tie, brushed something off his shoulder, looked him in the eye. "Remember, protect his dignity." "I will. And David, do not lose yourself up there. Say what needs to be said, but come back to us. We need you here, not on a stage. I will be back before lunch." She kissed him quick, firm. The kiss of a woman who loves a man and trusts him to carry something heavy without breaking. David got in the car. The drive to the Atlas National corporate office took 14 minutes. Victor was waiting in the lobby. Every major network is here. Local affiliates print digital international press picked it up overnight. BBC, Reuters, Al-Azhar. This is global, sir. Is the footage ready, queued, and ready to play on your signal? How many people in the room? Over 100. Standing room only. David nodded. He straightened his jacket. He walked down the corridor toward the conference room. He could hear the noise before he reached the door. Cameras clicking, people talking, the electric hum of a story that had already taken on a life of its own. He opened the door and walked in. The room went quiet, not slowly, instantly, like someone had pressed mute on the entire world. 100 cameras turned toward him, 100 pairs of eyes locked onto the man who had fired his entire flight crew and put a first-class passenger in handcuffs, the man whose son was lying in a hospital bed 4 miles away. David stepped behind the podium. He did not look at his notes. He looked at the cameras, which meant he was looking at every living room, every phone screen, every person in America who had watched the video and felt something move inside them. He spoke. Yesterday afternoon, my 8-year-old son, Malik, was aboard Atlas National Flight 714 from Atlanta to Seattle. He was traveling with his mother to see a specialist. Malik has late-stage leukemia. He has been fighting this disease for 2 years. He is brave in ways that I cannot describe. And yesterday, a fellow passenger in first class kicked him in the stomach because his pain made noise that she did not want to hear. He paused not for effect because the words were heavier than he expected. I am not here today as the CEO of Meridian Holdings. I am here as Malik's father, and I am here because what happened on that plane is not an isolated incident. It is a symptom of something deeper, something that every parent in this country has felt at one time or another. The fear that your child will not be protected, that the people who are supposed to help will look the other way, that your child's pain will be treated as someone else's inconvenience. He pressed the button. The footage played on the screen behind him. The room watched a woman stand up, cross an aisle, and kick a child. They watched the child fold. They watched the oxygen tube come loose. They watched the mother scream. They watched the crew freeze. David let it play to the end. Then he spoke again. 4 crew members have been suspended pending termination. The passenger who assaulted my son has been charged with federal assault on a minor. But I did not call this press conference to talk about punishment. I called it to talk about responsibility. He looked directly into the center camera. Every person on that plane had a choice. The crew had a choice. The passengers had a choice. Most of them chose silence. I am not here to condemn them. I am here to ask all of us, every single person watching this, what would you have done? And more importantly, what will you do next time? Because there will be a next time. There is always a next time. And the only thing that changes the outcome is whether someone stands up. A reporter raised her hand. Mr. Thompson, critics are saying you used your corporate power to bypass standard procedure, that firing the crew was personal, not professional. How do you respond? David did not hesitate. If a crew on any of my aircraft stood by while a child was assaulted and then offered the attacker a glass of water, I would make the same decision regardless of whether that child was mine. The fact that he was my son did not escalate my response. It accelerated it. There is a difference. Another reporter, will you release the full unedited footage? It will be made available to law enforcement and to the public through our legal team. I have nothing to hide. The footage speaks for itself. What about the experimental treatment for your son? Is he still eligible? David's jaw tightened. This was the question that cut closest to the bone. Dr. Keating is evaluating Malik today. The assault caused significant abdominal bruising. We are waiting to see if his body is stable enough to proceed. That decision is in the hands of his medical team. Mr. Thompson, one final question. What do you want people to take away from this? David was quiet for a moment. He thought about Malik in the hospital bed asking him to tell the cameras that he was not trying to bother anyone. He thought about the star blanket and the fishing trip and Captain Bubbles. He thought about his wife straightening his tie and telling him to come back. "My son asked me to tell you something this morning. He said to tell you that he was not trying to bother anybody on that plane. He said the pain just came and he could not stop it. He is 8 years old. He has cancer, and he is apologizing to the world for being in pain." David's voice held but barely. No child should ever have to apologize for suffering. No child should ever be punished for being sick. And no child should ever look up at his mother from the floor of an airplane and ask if he is going to die because a stranger decided his existence was an inconvenience. That is what I want people to take away. Protect children. All of them, not just the ones who belong to someone powerful. He stepped away from the podium. The room erupted. Questions flying from every direction, cameras flashing, reporters standing. David walked through them without stopping. Victor met him at the door. "Sir, the networks are going live with the footage. This is the #1 story in the country." David did not slow down. "Get me back to the hospital. Your communications team needs my son, needs me more. Get me back." The car pulled away from the building. David sat in the back seat and pulled out his phone. One text from Tanya. "Malik watched you on TV. He said, 'Daddy told them he is smiling David.' He is smiling." David read it twice. He pressed the phone against his chest and closed his eyes. The car moved through the streets of Seattle. Behind him, the press conference was already being replayed on every network. The footage was everywhere. The words were everywhere. And somewhere in a holding cell across the city, Lauren Whitmore was watching herself kick a dying child on a television bolted to the wall. And for the first time in her life, there was no one to tell her she was right. The press conference played on every screen in every waiting room at Seattle Children's Hospital. Nurses stopped in hallways to watch. Doctors pulled out their phones between rounds. A janitor stood in the cafeteria with a mop in one hand and his jaw open, watching David Thompson say the words that were already being printed on the front page of every newspaper in the country. But David was not watching. He was in the back seat of an SUV doing 60 through downtown Seattle, his phone pressed against his ear, listening to Dr. Keating deliver the news he had been dreading since the moment his son was carried off that plane. "Mr. Thompson, the overnight blood work shows a slight drop in Malik's platelet count. It is not critical yet, but given the abdominal trauma, we need to be cautious. The bruising is putting additional stress on a system that is already compromised. What does that mean for the treatment? I am not ruling it out, but I need 24 more hours of observation before I can clear him for the experimental protocol. If his platelets stabilize, we proceed. If they continue to drop, we have a different conversation." David gripped the phone harder. A different conversation meaning that the treatment requires a baseline level of physical resilience. If the assault pushed his body below that baseline, we may need to wait. And with late-stage leukemia, waiting is not always something we can afford. The line was quiet. David stared through the windshield at the city moving past him. Cars, buildings, people walking to jobs and coffee shops and lives that did not include sitting in the back of a car, being told that a stranger's kick might have stolen his son's last chance. Do everything you can, whatever he needs, whatever it costs. We are doing everything, Mr. Thompson. Malik is a fighter. Let us give him time to fight. David hung up. He leaned forward and put his head in his hands. For 30 seconds, the man who had stood behind a podium and spoken to the entire country without flinching sat in the back of a car and fell apart silently without witnesses, the way men like David always do. Then he lifted his head, wiped his face, and walked into the hospital. Tanya met him at the door of room 412. She had heard from Dr. Keating already. Her eyes told him everything before she opened her mouth. His platelets dropped. "I know this is because of her, because of what she did. If she had not kicked him, his body would be strong enough. He would be starting treatment today. David pulled her into his arms. She pressed her face against his chest, and he held her right there in the doorway of their son's hospital room, while monitors beeped and nurses walked past, and the world outside debated their tragedy on cable television. "We have 24 hours, Tanya. His body has come back from worse. You know that. I know that. But I am so tired of watching him come back from things he should never have had to face." David held her tighter. He did not have an answer for that. There was no answer for that. They walked in together. Malik was awake, propped up slightly, the star blanket spread across his legs. He had a cup of orange juice in one hand and the TV remote in the other. He looked at David and grinned. "Dad, you are famous." David almost laughed. "Almost? I do not want to be famous, buddy. The nurse said you were on every channel. She said you told everybody about me." David sat on the edge of the bed. "I told them what you asked me to tell them, that you were not trying to bother anyone." Malik nodded seriously. "Did they believe me?" "The whole country believes you, Malik. Even the mean lady." David looked at his son, 8 years old, 53 pounds, fighting cancer, and still worried about whether the woman who kicked him believed he was telling the truth. "I do not know what she believes, buddy, but I know what matters. And what matters is that you told the truth. You always tell the truth, and that is more than most grown-ups can say." Malik took a sip of juice. "Dad, am I going to get the new medicine?" David's chest tightened. "The doctors need one more day to check your body. They want to make sure you are strong enough." "I am strong enough." "I know you are. Tell them I am strong enough." "I will, buddy. I will tell them." Malik put the juice down and looked at his father with eyes that carried too much knowledge for an 8-year-old. "Dad, if I do not get the medicine, am I going to die?" Tanya turned away. She walked to the window and put her hand over her mouth. David did not turn away. He looked his son in the eye. "You are going to get the medicine, and you are going to keep fighting, and I am going to be right here every single day. That is what is going to happen. Promise, I promise." Malik held out his pinky. David wrapped his pinky around it. They locked. Malik smiled. David smiled back. And inside his chest, something that had been holding together by the thinnest thread pulled taut and held. 2:45 p.m. David's phone had not stopped buzzing since the press conference. He stepped into the hallway and scrolled through the messages. Board members, executives, his PR team, his legal team, journalists from 4 countries. But one message stood out from all the others. It was from Gerald Carter, the retired police officer who had been on Flight 714. He had tracked down David's corporate email through the Meridian Holdings website. "Mr. Thompson, my name is Gerald Carter. I was in row 14 on your son's flight. I witnessed the assault. I confronted the woman afterward and demanded the crew's names. I also have something you should know. During the flight after the incident, I overheard the lead flight attendant, Mark Ellison, make a phone call from the rear galley. He called someone at Atlas National Operations and described the incident as a, quote, passenger disagreement with a minor. He did not use the word assault. He did not mention a kick. He actively downplayed what happened while your son was lying on the floor. I wanted you to have this information. I have already provided a statement to law enforcement." David read it twice. Then he called Victor. "Pull the phone records for Mark Ellison during Flight 714. I want to know who he called when he called, and I want a transcript of that conversation if it was recorded on our operations line. Sir, if Ellison misreported the incident to operations, that changes the investigation. That is not just negligence. That is a cover-up. I know exactly what it is. Get me the records." Victor called back in 40 minutes. David was sitting in the hallway outside Malik's room, his back against the wall, his laptop on his knees. "Sir, we have it." Ellison called the Atlas National Operations Desk at 3:27 p.m. Pacific, approximately 18 minutes after the assault. The call was recorded. He told the operations coordinator, and I am quoting from the transcript, "We have a minor passenger situation in first class, a disagreement between an adult passenger and a family. The family is upset. We are managing it. No diversion needed. just flagging it for the arrival report." End quote. David was silent. Sir, he used the word disagreement, not assault, not physical contact, not even disturbance. He called it a disagreement, and he said no diversion needed, which means the operations desk never escalated it. The medical team at the gate was arranged by your office, not by the crew. So if I had not made those calls, what would have happened when that plane landed? Victor paused. Standard deplaning, a routine incident report filed within 24 hours, and Ms. Whitmore would have walked off that plane and disappeared into baggage claim. David closed the laptop slowly. Update the investigation. Mark Ellison's suspension is no longer pending termination. It is immediate termination with cause. Misrepresentation of a violent incident. Failure to protect a minor passenger. Obstruction of internal safety protocols. Understood, sir, and the others. The investigation continues, but Ellison is done today. David hung up. He sat in that hallway and thought about what Gerald Carter had written. Mark Ellison had watched a woman kick a child, had offered that woman water, and then had picked up a phone and told his company it was a disagreement. Not because he believed it, because admitting the truth meant admitting his own failure. Somewhere in this city, Mark Ellison was sitting in his apartment, probably watching the press conference footage, probably realizing that the world now knew what he had done. But he did not yet know that the world was about to find out what he had said on that phone call. That was coming. 4:00 p.m. The story had taken on a life beyond anything David had anticipated. The press conference footage had been viewed over 20 million times. The passenger videos of the incident collectively had passed 50 million. The hashtag #ProtectAllChildren was trending in 14 countries. 3 United States senators had issued statements calling for stronger federal protections for minor passengers on commercial flights. The CEO of a competing airline had publicly pledged to implement new crew intervention training, and a petition calling for maximum sentencing for Lauren Whitmore had gathered over 800,000 signatures in less than 12 hours. David's VP of Communications called him. "David, I need you to know what is happening. This is no longer a news story. This is a movement. People are sharing their own stories. Parents of sick children, parents of disabled children, Black families who have been treated differently on flights. It is everywhere. Every platform, every network. This is the biggest story in the country right now." David listened. He closed his eyes. What do they need from me? They need to know what comes next. The story right now is the incident and the firing, but people want to know what changes. They want action. They will get it, but not today. Today, I am with my son. He hung up and walked back into room 412. Tanya was reading to Malik from a book about a boy who builds a rocket ship in his backyard. Malik was listening with his eyes half open, his fingers curled around the edge of the star blanket. David had sat down beside them and listened too. For 1 hour, there were no cameras, no phone calls, no press conferences, no hashtags, just a mother reading, a father listening, and a boy fighting to stay alive. 7:00 p.m. Doris Freeman called the hospital. She had tracked down the room number through a nurse she knew. She asked to speak to Tanya. "Mrs. Thompson, this is Doris from the plane." Tanya gripped the phone. "Doris, I have been thinking about you. I wanted to thank you. You stayed with us. You were the only one who helped. I did what anyone should have done. I just wish I had done more. You did enough. You did more than enough." Doris was quiet for a moment. "How is he?" "He is stable. They are watching his blood levels. He might still get the treatment." "Good. That boy has the heart of a lion. I saw it in his eyes on that plane. He is not done fighting." Tanya smiled. The first real smile in 2 days. "He is not, Mrs. Thompson." "I wanted to tell you something else. I have been contacted by several news outlets. They want my account of what happened. I have not spoken to anyone yet. I wanted to ask you first. I will not say a word if you do not want me to." Tanya looked at David. She covered the phone. "Doris, the nurse from the plane. Media wants her story. She is asking our permission. David thought for a moment. Tell her to tell the truth. All of it. Tanya uncovered the phone. Tell them everything, Doris. The world needs to hear it from someone who was right there. I will. And Mrs. Thompson, give that boy a hug from me. I will. 9 p.m. David was sitting beside Malik's bed when his phone buzzed with a text from his attorney. Lauren Whitmore's legal team has reached out. They want to discuss a settlement, private confidential. They are offering a significant sum in exchange for the Thompson family dropping involvement in the criminal prosecution and issuing a joint statement characterizing the incident as a misunderstanding. David read the message. He read it again. Then he typed back 4 words. There is no settlement. His attorney responded immediately. David, the number they are proposing is substantial 7 figures, and the criminal case proceeds regardless of your involvement. You could take the money and still see her prosecuted. David typed back, this was never about money. If I accept a settlement, every parent in this country who watched that footage will think that what happened to Malik has a price tag. It does not tell her lawyers that my son's pain is not for sale. His attorney did not respond for a full minute. Then 1 word appeared on the screen. Understood. David put the phone down and looked at Malik asleep, breathing steadily, the star blanket rising and falling with each breath. Tanya was watching David from across the bed. They offered money. Yes. How much? It does not matter. Tanya nodded slowly. Good. Thursday morning, 6 a.m., Dr. Kading walked into room 412 with a tablet in one hand and something on his face that David and Tanya had not seen from a doctor in a very long time. Hope. His platelets stabilized overnight. They actually ticked up slightly at the 4 a.m. draw. His white count is holding. The abdominal swelling has decreased. He is not out of the woods, but he is where I need him to be. Tanya grabbed David's arm. Does that mean it means we can proceed with the experimental treatment I want to start this afternoon? Tanya put both hands over her face. Her shoulders shook. David put his arm around her and held on. Dr. Keating gave them a moment. He looked at Malik, who was awake and watching his parents with wide eyes. Am I getting the medicine? Dr. Keating smiled. You are getting the medicine, Malik. The one that might make me better. The one we are going to use to fight as hard as we can. Malik looked at David. I told you I was strong enough. David laughed. It came out broken and wet, but it was a laugh. You told me you were right. Word spread fast. Within an hour, David's communications team released a brief update. Malik Thompson had been cleared for experimental treatment. The family thanked the public for their support and asked for privacy during the medical process. The response was immediate. Messages poured in from every corner of the country, from parents, from cancer survivors, from doctors and nurses and teachers and strangers who had never met the Thompson family, but felt somehow that Malik belonged to all of them. A children's hospital in Boston sent a care package. A school in Chicago made a banner. A firefighter in Dallas recorded a video message telling Malik he was the bravest kid in America. A little girl in Phoenix, 9 years old, also fighting leukemia, dictated a letter to her mother that said, Dear Malik, I saw you on TV. You are really tough. I am tough too. Maybe we can be tough together. Tanya read that letter out loud to Malik while David sat beside them. Malik listened carefully. When Tanya finished, he said, Can I write her back? Of course you can tell her I said she's tougher than me. 3 days later, David stood in front of the Meridian Holdings Board of Directors, 12 people seated around a conference table, Richard Caldwell at the head. David did not sit down, he stood. What happened on Flight 714 was a failure. Not just of one crew, not just of one passenger. It was a failure of the system I built. I have spent 15 years building this company, and I never once asked whether our policies were designed to protect the most vulnerable people on our planes. I am asking now, and the answer is no, they were not. He laid out a plan, mandatory intervention training for every crew member across all Atlas national flights, zero-tolerance assault policies with immediate crew response protocols, an independent passenger protection board with no ties to corporate leadership, a dedicated fund for passengers who experience discrimination or violence in the air, and a partnership with children's hospitals nationwide to ensure that families traveling with critically ill children receive priority support from the moment they book their ticket. Richard Caldwell looked around the table. All in favor. 12 hands went up unanimous. David nodded. One more thing, I am establishing a foundation, the Malik Thompson Foundation. It will support terminally ill children who face discrimination in public spaces. It will provide legal resources, medical, travel assistance, and advocacy. The initial funding will come from my personal holdings, not from corporate accounts. This is not a business decision. This is a father's decision. Richard stood up. He walked to David and extended his hand. I have known you for 15 years, David. I have never been prouder to sit on your board. David shook his hand. He did not trust himself to speak. 2 weeks later, Jessica Reed sat in her apartment staring at a letter. It was from the Meridian Holdings HR department. As David had noted, her cooperation during the investigation had been recorded. The Internal Review Board had determined that while her initial failure to act warranted dismissal, her subsequent efforts, her apology to Tanya, her detailed written account of the incident, and her voluntary testimony demonstrated accountability. Her termination was modified to a suspension with a path to reinstatement pending completion of a newly designed passenger protection training program. Jessica read the letter 3 times. Then she sat down at her kitchen table and cried. Not from relief from the weight of knowing that she had been given a second chance that she was not sure she deserved, and from the absolute certainty that she would spend the rest of her career making sure no child on any flight she worked would ever be failed the way Malik Thompson was failed. Mark Ellison did not receive a second chance. His termination was final. The transcript of his phone call to operations was included in the federal investigation file. He was also named in a civil negligence complaint filed by the Thompson family's legal team. He did not make a public statement. He disappeared from the industry entirely. Captain Torres and Brenda Okafor were terminated as well. Torres appealed through his union. The appeal was denied. The arbitrator cited the cabin surveillance footage and the testimony of 6 passengers, including Darrell Carter, who confirmed that the captain was informed of the assault and chose not to divert. Lauren Whitmore's trial began 11 weeks after the incident. Federal prosecutors charged her with assault on a minor aboard a commercial aircraft. The trial lasted 4 days. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. At sentencing, the judge asked if the defendant wished to make a statement. Lawrence stood. She was thinner than she had been on the plane. Her hair was pulled back. Her hands were shaking. I made a terrible mistake. I lost control. I did not intend to. The judge held up his hand. Miss Whitmore, the footage shows a deliberate act. You stood up. You crossed the aisle. And you kicked a terminally ill child. Intent is not in question. She was sentenced to 18 months in federal prison and 3 years of supervised release. As she was led from the courtroom, she passed the row where Tanya sat. Their eyes met for 1 second. Tanya did not look away. Lauren did. The experimental treatment worked. Not immediately, not miraculously. But over the course of 4 months, Malik's blood counts began to shift. The leukemia cells that had been multiplying unchecked started to slow, then retreat. Then in areas where doctors had expected nothing but progression, they found something they had not seen in 2 years of fighting. Remission partial at first, then expanding. Week by week, scan by scan, Malik Thompson's body began to win. Dr. Keating called David and Tanya into his office on a Tuesday afternoon. Malik was in the playroom down the hall building a tower out of plastic blocks with another patient, a girl his age who had lost her hair the same month he lost his. I want to be cautious with language. Dr. Keating said, We are not using the word cured, but we are using the word remission, significant remission. His latest scans show a 72% reduction in leukemic cells. His bone marrow biopsy is the cleanest it has been since diagnosis. Tanya pressed both hands flat against the desk like she needed to hold on to something solid. Are you telling me my son is getting better? I am telling you that your son is responding to treatment in ways that exceed our projections. He has a long road ahead. But yes, Mrs. Thompson, he is getting better. David did not speak. He sat in the chair beside his wife, his hands clasped between his knees, his head bowed, and he let the tears come quietly without apology. The tears of a man who had spent 2 years preparing to lose his son and was just told he might get to keep him. Tanya put her hand on the back of his neck. She held it there, and they stayed like that together while the world outside continued to spin and argue and forget. But in that office, in that moment, time stopped for just long enough. 6 months after Flight 714, Malik Thompson stood at the window of his hospital room in Seattle. He was stronger now. His cheeks had filled out. A thin layer of dark fuzz had started growing back on his head. He weighed 61 pounds. He could walk the hallway without stopping to rest. He could laugh without it hurting. He watched a plane climb into the sky through the gray Seattle clouds. He pressed his finger against the glass and followed it until it disappeared. David sat behind him, not on a conference call, not reviewing a report, not building an empire, just sitting, watching his son watch the world. Dad. Yeah, buddy. Do you think the people on that plane are going somewhere good? I hope so. I want to go on a plane again someday. David's throat tightened. You will. And nobody will kick me this time. Nobody will ever hurt you again, Malik. Malik turned from the window. He walked to his father and climbed into his lap. He was getting too big for it. His legs hung over the side. But he fit. He always fit. Dad. Yeah, thank you for coming. David wrapped his arms around his son. He rested his chin on the top of Malik's head, on the soft new fuzz that was growing and where cancer had taken everything away. I will always come, buddy. Always. They sat there together, father and son. The star blanket was draped over the arm of the chair. The monitors beeped in rhythm. Outside, another plane rose into the sky. Titles get taken away. Boardrooms go quiet. Power shifts between hands that never deserved it and hands that always did. But a father who stands up when the whole world sits down. A father who chooses his son over silence, over optics, over every comfortable lie that says this is not your fight. That father leaves behind something that no company can build and no career can replace. Malik Thompson was alive. He was getting stronger, and his father had not missed a single day. That is not power. That is not wealth.